Good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome to another episode of Gather to Grow here on Twitter Spaces with Food for Mzansi. I'm your host, Dawn Numdu, and I'm really excited about tonight's session. I think we're all amped to get all of the information that we need in terms of load shedding and precautions and tips for farmers and how they deal with it, and information that they can share to make your life a little bit easier. I think we had to do somersaults today, testing and, trying to just accommodate people's times and people's load shedding schedules. So I'm so happy to have all of my speakers here. And I see we have a number of listeners also trickling in. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to ask all of my speakers just to tell us a little bit about themselves, what they do. Some of them are not new. They've been with me on this platform before, and I'm so happy to have them here. I'm going to start with Dr. Nadir Malan. Dr. Nadir Malan, I feel like you need little to no introduction when it comes to the agricultural sector, but he is a senior lecturer in development studies at the University of Johannesburg, and he's also the convener of the multi-stakeholder engagement project called Isidaba Okutla. Dr. Nadir Malan, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Dawn, and hello, everybody. It's always great to be here. Kind of also feel like part of the digital furniture is Food for Mzansi, because it's been interesting to see you guys grow from where you are. I am at the moment not in development studies anymore, but I am taking care of the National Diploma in Small Business at the University of Johannesburg's Soweto campus. I intend to transform the diploma offering to reflect circular and sustainable enterprises and how to develop them and make them thrive. So that is where I'm at the moment. Yeah, I also run Izindaba Zokudla, which is a stakeholder engagement project, and I'm just waiting for permission to start it again on campus after the COVID lockdown. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you get to that point where people come to visit you. So I no longer make tea for you at my house. You can grab yourself a cup of coffee. I think we're at that space in our relationship, Dr. Nadir Malan. And it's so great to have you with us in the space. I now move over to Joanna Gregory. She's a Western Cape poultry farmer. Guys, she's been, nominated for a number of awards. She's won a number of awards in the industry, and she's really a dynamic woman in the sector. Joanna, just a bit about yourself for people who might not know you. And of course, guys, all of these people featured here today, you can read about all of their stories on Food from Mzansi as well. Welcome to Gather to Grow here on Twitter Spaces with me.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Joanna Gregory. I'm the owner and founder of our poultry place based in Cape Town. And I'm a female chicken farmer, and I'm happy to be here.
She always likes to downplay what she's done in the sector. She's quite dynamic, guys. Next, we have Thabo Osana. He is a Newcastle dairy farmer. Thabo was with us for our Youth Month session. He's really changing the game and making the agricultural sector look so attractive. So thank you so much, Thabo, for being here.
Good evening to everyone on this podcast right now. I'm a dairy and beef farmer based here in Newcastle, KZN. And my experience in agriculture tracks back way back because I was also in an agricultural college. And so I'm just furthering my experience within the industry and, making a name for myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thabo. And next we have Daniel De Sosa. He started an amazing initiative. They started farming in neighborhoods, basically starting with little to nothing, and they've grown from there, and they own the farm nearby. So if you can just tell us more about your initiative, more about the work that you do in the agricultural space, and more about the innovation. I mean, that's the most important part for me. Daniel, welcome.
Hi, everyone. So essentially, I help run the company called The Farm Nearby, which is essentially a small-scale farming company focusing on growing quick-growing crops in rented and borrowed land, essentially throughout urban cities or urban areas in the city, but mainly focusing on inspiring people to rethink and change how our food system works and the spaces in which we live in.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's great to have you with us. I saw that my final guest was here, and I know that my other guest, Nompe, is also still trying to connect with us. But as soon as they get you guys, I'm going to give them the floor again just to tell us more about what they do and where they're based and just to contribute to the conversation. Now, there's no doubt that rolling blackouts negatively affect farming operations and production in Mzansi. I'm going to maybe ask Dr. Nadir Malan to kick us off, just to share, what is the broad economic implications in terms of food security and economic growth when it comes to load shedding, and what is our status and what are the future risks?
It looks pretty bleak. I mean, load shedding is affecting us severely right down to investment level. Even local South Africans don't want to invest in South Africa because it's too difficult. But we have to also see the silver lining around the cloud. High food prices mean higher prices for farmers, although the higher prices could be taken away by the rise in input costs. And these input costs always rise faster than the prices the farmer can get. And the farmer is always at the back foot. The farmer must be sharp. So I would say, load shedding, it's looking dire, but come on, let's think about what you can do. Now, the first thing that you need to think about when you have higher costs is that if you can save energy, say around electricity, the money you put in saving with your existing infrastructure is going to give much higher returns than replacing the infrastructure with solar panels and such. So it's really important to start with saving and looking at your whole energy and electricity use system. And look at things like lights that are on in the day. These pilot lights on televisions and radios and computers that stay on all day, they use 15% of your energy. And that's a lot. It's a huge amount. DIY retrofit. Water pipes can be paper mache and insulated. You can replace relationships instead of savings in the sense of how you trade with your purchasing and your inputs and trying to get savings on bulk buys and things like that. But the whole thing is, if you're going to win this load shedding fight, if you can't save, you're never going to make it. So save even with the existing infrastructure. After that, design and plan a transition to alternative technologies and then slowly start acquiring them. And that's really the only choice. We're going to have to wait 5 to 6 more years before we have energy security in South Africa.
Thanks so much for setting the scene. And I'm actually happy that we said it in such a solution-driven way that, we're all struggling with it and there's no point in moaning at this point. So we just kind of have to think about how we make it so that it works for us. And I think that's really great that you gave us that context. Milan, really appreciate that. I actually missed her. She's here in the space, guys. Nombes, you can introduce yourself. Tell us more about what you do. You are a Free State dairy farmer, and you were also awarded the ARC's National Small Scale Master Dairyman of the Year Award in 2021. So just to tell us more about yourself, and then my next questions are actually going to you. And I see here David also just joined us. Nompe, welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Nompe based in Eastern Free State. I'm a dairy farmer. The issue of load shedding, it has an impact on all of us. Just a little background on myself. I grew up on a farm. I was born on a farm. So I grew up in a dairy farm, but it was a dairy farm. Unfortunately, that years back, I took over from him, and I'm still in the industry. So it's a pity we have the challenges that we have now and try to adjust with everything that's happening in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nompe, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us. Now, Nompe, maybe just more in terms of how load shedding is affecting you. We know that it's negatively impacting, energy-intensive and irrigation-dependent industries within the sector. You're running a dairy, poultry farmers are affected. We have crop farmers and people working in aquaponics. Maybe we can just break it down and just as we start the conversation in terms of how it affects you on your farm. Can you maybe just start with that?
As a dairy farmer, I'm using a standby generator when there's no power. So basically, I'm using a tractor generator, of which it can only operate one machine at a time. Meaning, if I experience our load shedding in the morning around 6 o'clock or either 4 o'clock, I'll have to use a tractor generator to get power so that I can milk. Unfortunately, I can't cool my milk at that time. I can only milk. After milking, only then I'll be able to cool my milk. So what happens when you're milking? Remember, the milk is hot from the cow. So it needs to be cooled immediately while milking. So if you can't cool the milk within a certain period, unfortunately, your bacteria will be high. And also, there is a high possibility that your milk might be sour depending on how long the power will be gone. So it has a negative impact. It's very bad, I don't want to lie. Most farmers in my area, those who doesn't have the generators, unfortunately, they're losing their milk because they can't cool it. That's the worst thing about milk because you have to cool it immediately while milking. So you can't keep it more than 2 hours without cooling it. So keeping it for more than those hours, it will dead sour and there isn't much you can do about it. And no market will take your sour milk, unfortunately. So you have no choice but to spill it. You can't do anything about it. So it's quite bad, but also I am happy because I supply Nestle. Nestle has introduced new initiatives, but at the right time, I will talk about it on how it will help us, the dairy farmers, especially those working with Nestle from now onwards. Thank you, Nomanda.
Thank you so much, Nompe. I really appreciate that context, and I'm really sorry about your reality and what you're dealing with currently. Tabo, you're also in the dairy sector. Are you experiencing the same things that Nompe is experiencing? And maybe what are the steps that you've put in place to, to deal with it?
I do have to echo what Nompe has said. As we all know, that dairy farming is highly mechanized, comprising of both irrigation dependency and energy intensity. Every dairy operation requires electricity at least twice a day. We at the farm, we have 2 schedules. So we start at 3:30 a.m. in the morning for our first session. And then our first session is at 1 p.m., which most of the production processes, which include milking of cattle, which is usually scheduled for early mornings and late afternoons, as I said. These are the times which inevitably coincide with the load shedding periods. So we have to make adjustments according to that. And it goes as far as the process also includes that the milk we milk in the dairy portals, it has to be stored in tanks as well, which always have to remain cool at all times. So with no electricity, the milk loses its preserved value. So load shedding is definitely a hard knock for us on the farm, and we have to resort to using generators as well.
Thanks, Tabo. It sounds really bad at this point. You guys are both using generators, but what are the other options? Without giving too much away, Nompe, what do you think is possible? Does it actually mean you're dumping the milk because it can't be used? What are you guys doing, and what advice do you have?
In my case, I use a different tank. I have 3 tanks on the farm, so I always have a same tank in case of emergency. So when I experience load shedding, I use an empty tank. That way, I know only a few amount of milk will be in the tank. It takes me 2.5 hours to milk, so I know by then I'll be done. Then I can use the tractor to cool the milk. So currently, Nestle introduced a very interesting initiative whereby they are contributing 70%, and they also loan us 30%, to install the solar system. That way, it will be much easier for us because when there's power, those sellers will be helping. They'll be supplying us with energy. So when there's no power, we'll be using stored energy, of which it could help us to run the operation up until the power is back. The other thing that you're using, I think Nestle introduced it years back together with ARC, International Research Council, the use of biogas, whereby we're using the cow waste to generate the gas. So it's quite easier for you to cook with it and to use it for light. So normally we use it to warm the water, so that when you finish milking, instead of running the generator just to warm your water, then you know that you already have a warm water, and you just proceed to your schedule because you can't keep the milk machine late either way. The bacteria will play its course. So I think solar is the way, actually. I can't say much about the generator because either way we can see that the diesel cost is rising every month, every week. So it's quite a challenge. And I think we're facing the global recession. So I wouldn't vouch for generators. I think solar is the only way for us here. And we approach companies like Nestle, those who say, you know what, we will contribute something. 70% is a lot. Imagine if you have to buy a solar worth 1 point, this is paying 70%, and they say we loan you the 30%, and they only deduct it on monthly basis when they pay you for a period of 4 years. It's quite an opportunity that we use as farmers, and we benefit from it. And I applaud that. I so wish that many companies, they can do that so that they can help our upcoming farmers and the emerging farmers, even the commercial one, because we're all affected. You can't just specify and say shedding is affecting a certain individual. We should focus on certain people only. We're all affected.
Thanks, Nompe. Tabo, you unmuted your mic. Something to add, and then I'd like to get Daviso into the conversation as well.
I do agree with what my fellow speaker has just said. The effects of load shedding has resulted role players, especially in the dairy industry, to think fast on their feet all the time because it's a new reality that we need to live with right now. But I'm more grateful of what the speakers mentioned about the solar energy because I also think of it as a possible alternative. However, I wasn't very knowledgeable about it as much as I am about generators. My advice for dairy farmers that are using generators is I would highly advise them to get diesel tanks because what we have on the farm, we have a reserve diesel tank where we make use or take advantage when the diesel prices are stagnant or they aren't, spiking as much. Diesel fuel prices are another problem at the moment, but when they are stagnant, we buy as much diesel as possible before the price, increases. So when we need to use the generators, we have enough in our storage tanks in order to last us for a long period of time before the price spikes up again. So we need to be very economic about this whole thing as well.
Thanks, Tabo. I'd maybe like to get Daviso into the conversation. Daviso is an animal scientist and founder of KVD Livestock. Daviso, thanks so much for being here. I didn't get to your introductions in the beginning, but maybe just a short background about yourself. And then I'd like to ask you more specifically around, some of the aspects in terms of the interruptions and the health of livestock, especially on dairy farms. If you're not able to milk, what are the implications on the health of the animals? Just to add on that point before we move over to poultry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daviso Chishingen. I'm an animal scientist. I work with quite a number of farmers, dairy, poultry, piggery in problem solving, if in terms of health, feed, and other production-related problems. So I'm from Zimbabwe. To the question, in terms of the implications or the interruptions of electricity where there is load shedding, the health of the animals, number one, it stresses the animals because you can just imagine at 3 a.m., that is when there is the first lot of cows which needs to be milked, and then all of a sudden there is no electricity. Just from light, it gets into the dark. Number one, is going to make our animals stressed. Then, if we can't milk our cows, we're going to cause pressure to the milk ducts. So some animals are just going to start to eject milk on the ground, which is a loss to the farmer because that milk was supposed to be collected and stored in a tank. Number two, if our milk ducts suffer from pressure and they collapse, we start now having problems of mastitis, especially mastitis. This is bad news to the farmer because mastitis is going to increase the bacterial count. And when the bacterial count increases, you're going to have problems in the payment of the milk because of the quality. But as well, the moment mastitis develops, it means that that cow has more chances of getting diseased from other diseases, more chances of getting other infections through the milk ducts.
Thanks so much for that, David. So I really appreciate that context. Just to add on to what Tabo and Nompe were saying in terms of their lived realities and dealing with load shedding on their farms. So we spoke about dairy farming now, and I'd maybe like to move over to poultry. Now we have a poultry farmer here as well. We're in the middle of winter, brooding or heating is especially, important when it comes to young chicks in broiler houses. They need to be warmed at certain parts of the day, and that also needs to be finely balanced. So, Andrew, what is your reality? What are you dealing with at the moment? And then we'll go over to some of the solutions.
Dawn, my reality is huge mortalities, slow growth, increased labor costs, and the list go on, my darling. As a poultry farmer, I feel I'm a bit demotivated walking into your coops, finding that your animals is literally just dying because they couldn't be kept warm. You have to increase your workmanship because now the guys, while it's dark, they need to make sure that the smaller chicks don't kill each other. That's another mission. I do have a generator, but at times the generator can't even power half of the heating solutions that I have. I just feel like we are so on the losing end. Doesn't matter what we do. Whether you have a generator, petrol is expensive. If you don't have it, you're still losing the flock. Even if you have it, you still need more manpower especially during the night. So it's really not conducive. And unfortunately, it's a rolling effect. It doesn't just end with keeping your chickens warm. It impacts such a lot of things. It impacts food prices, feed prices. People can't afford to buy chicken because now as a farmer, unfortunately, we are at the receiving end of everything, but have to think of the consumer. But now we have to pass on those costs to the consumer. We do not have a choice. Mr. Nadir spoke about saving. I think that was something that Eskom needs to be educated on. Because how many load sheddings did we have prior to 2022? Somewhere somebody needs to learn how to save the coal, especially for winter, or make some savings somewhere. As a small farmer, I don't have the money to spend on a whole solar system. I can't afford it. Right now, I can barely afford feeding my family. And so does other families feel as well. Because solar is expensive. It might save you in the long run, but right now it doesn't even seem like a solution to me. I have to go back to making fire, making coals, begging the guys to please make fire, put them in the coals in drums. That's our solution for now to keep our chickens warm. Slow growth to me means more feed. If the lights go off, the chickens automatically stresses because it's dark. So that stress on their health or on their body, it's not good. So you now end up slow growth, increased feed pricing. You have to feed them now more. They stay with you longer. So that is all expenses. It's very sad. And I don't know where we're going to and I feel for the mommies today because as mothers, we will have to learn how to feed our families on tighter budgets. Chicken used to be one of the cheapest protein, but if you go into the shop, it's shockingly expensive. And as a farmer, I do understand because we are now exposed to all these things. You cannot, honestly speaking, not even think about not passing on the cost anymore because you will not be able to keep your doors open. That's my reality, Don. Even wood is expensive. If you go out there and you have to go and buy wood, I'm not thinking of other farmers. Luckily, my neighbor is a tree fella. He sometimes brings me all the stumps and the trees and whatever they cut off. So I now capitalize on that. But what about the other guys that literally have to go and buy wood from somewhere? The expenses just pile up. It's like we are not winning. I don't want to be the doom and the gloom, but it is what it is. There's no way that we are winning, whether it's having a generator or not, use fire or not. Everything costs money.
No need to apologize for being the doom and the gloom. I asked you about your lived experience and what's happening practically on your farm, and you're sharing that with us. So thank you so much for that, Joanna. And you mentioned some of the alternatives that you're using. You're getting, wood from your neighbors that you're burning and coals to keep your chickens warm. Is there anyone else in the space who maybe wants to contribute, say something, add to what Joanna's mentioning about the effects and the cost that's rising across the board for her?
Dawn, if I may, thank you so much. And I just want to say to Nompe, Tabo, Davita, and Joanna, thank you so much for the honesty. I'm actually very grateful to be able to speak in this context. But if I may give a bit of a bird's eye or academic perspective, and excuse me for sitting here on an armchair and commenting from the side, but we must understand the deeper reason why things are under pressure. And it's not because you guys are bad farmers in any sense, but the business models upon which agriculture depends, those are actually in question in the context of sustainability. And sustainability it's not only that there's resource scarcities, it is also that the way in which the enterprise models work, they leak because they are focused on one thing. For instance, a milk focus only on milk and perhaps a bit of meat if it's the right breed. But you see, it's focused on one, and so ecologically, that system leaks. So what we need to think about is that different business models will change the equation on how solvent you are. And different business models, like a strong circular model, which is deeply designed and catches all the leaks of waste and repurposes it as byproduct of the enterprise. Something like that can give you a resilient system, which will maybe be more important in times of sustainability and climate change than a business model which pushes you. And I can hear behind Nompe and Tabu, I know what's going on in the milk industry. It's not a good industry for farmers. That industry is pushing you to just produce higher and higher volumes because there's such competition. And you're all fighting against Frontera in New Zealand that just produces so much that it's an unfair game. To get out of that game, you have to innovate in a circular business model. And it's a long story to talk about, but maybe I can just offer that as something to think about in the future.
Thanks so much, Nadia. And that's exactly why I love being in these engaging spaces, specifically when you're with the points that you're making. And I hope that we'll all take it and run with it and look at how you can create this model that you're talking about and thrive and not just survive in the sector. I'm going to move over to another farmer who's also here, Daniel. Crop farmers, you rely on irrigation and you are also severely impacted by load shedding. Irrigation schedules are usually, scheduled when the times are cooler during the day. I'm not sure how relevant that is during the winter season, but maybe you can just talk about what your reality is and how you deal with load shedding on a day-to-day basis.
Personally, I'd like to just say I sympathize with large-scale farmers, poultry, dairy farming. I think heavily weighted on scheduled irrigation processes that are reliant on electricity. I think that's massive impact in your business. So I think also the cost of for running generators, load shedding, fuel prices, I think are definitely factors that have, I think, pushed us as a business to go the direction we have chosen to go. I think now more than ever, I think it shows the value in adopting certain growing methods for veg production. I think with the challenges we're facing now, I think it's important to know that there are other means to adapt. We've just been discussing. So I'll just start off with saying that a little bit about the farm nearby. I mentioned earlier, we're aiming on inspiring people to rethink and change how the food system works and how we view the spaces we live in. So if you look at small to medium scale farmers who are still making use of techniques like spin farming, we've done talks with you guys on Food from Zanzibar before. So if anyone's encouraged to go and read about us, feel free to do that. But I think small plot intensive, no-till methods are a big aspect of our business now, working in the areas that we have managed to grow our business towards helping people outside the city as well, who are, daily facing issues before now, big power cuts, water cuts too. If we focus on smaller spaces to be more productive, we're able to use more traditional watering methods, hand watering cans, gravity-fed JoJo tanks. I think are small little tricks of the trades that you learn along the way. And I think those are sort of things that I think we need to lean on, which is staring us around the face. Everyone has access to a hardware store that go and purchase a JoJo tank, or at least already have access to that for outside toilets or whatever the case be. So if you're looking at small to medium scale farming, I think that would be a major encouragement. Encourage people to look at gravity-fed JoJo tanks to the outside areas. If you've got like a big open space, that's also something that you can get pressure from. Obviously, that brings its own challenges. You've got manual labor, as we were saying earlier, other farming sectors. You're forced to come up with other ways to ensure efficiency. We make means of incorporating landscape fabrics, mulching, those sorts of techniques to keep moisture within the soil. So I think more time in the field now with a more hands-on approach with watering cans, using a hose pipe out in the field, the team, if you're able to build that into your daily schedule, it ends up being a little bit more productive than you expect. If you're out in the field a lot more longer, you see things differently, you take notes, your data capturing aspect of your business enhances. I think you learn a lot more from not only the negative aspect of what we're dealing with, but the positive. So I would say hand watering, gravity-fed Jojo tanks, more time in the field means something data capturing can improve. And also the rate at which newcomers into the industry can learn. I think it's forcing us to be a little bit more involved rather than sitting back trying to figure out what other people are doing rather than just getting involved. Obviously, hydroponics is a bit different. Inverters are another alternative to generators. Might be a bit pricey, so I think that also comes with its own risks. Obviously, everyone knows, theft is also a thing, so I think people would about you in terms of how you do that. But I think the first and foremost thing for small-scale veg farmers would be to consider alternative methods like spin farming, no-till methods, and then mulching. Those are small techniques and tweaks that you can incorporate without a very heavy overhead costs upfront.
Thanks, Daniel, and thanks so much for sharing that advice. Now, Davidzo, you're also working in the aquaponics industry. What is your reality and what are some of the challenges that you face in terms of load shedding and some of the solutions or tips and aspects that farmers should think about?
So one challenge, this one is experience, is that so there was load shedding at the farm around 1 a.m. and you're there's no electricity, there's no circulation of water. What happens in that kind of system that water needs to circulate and ammonia needs to be removed. The moment the water does not circulate because of lack of electricity, you start having ammonia buildup. When ammonia builds up, it kills the fish. There is lack of oxygen because the rippling of water which was being created by the pumps is no longer there. So there's no longer oxygen which is being produced. So what we had to do was, I think the speaker before me mentioned that you need a gravity tank. Really, for sure, that's very, very important because the tank is still even to put pressure or to put water in another space or in another system with a little bit of pressure, different from a tank which uses a booster pump. To make sure that we open a pipe from the tank, that we put water in the system, and then have a pipe also to remove water from the system. That's how we were able to save the fish. But it was a very, very disastrous event that our generator was on service. So definitely we didn't have a generator, which we normally use when there is low load shedding. So we had to find a way to fix the problem or find a solution so that we can be able to increase our oxygen, but be able to remove excess water through another pipe so that we remove the ammonia.
Thanks, Davidzo. So I think everyone in the space has kind of, shared some of their tips, some of their options available to them, some of their realities. It is difficult, but I think that there are options available. I see we have Duncan Masiwa, who is the head of news at Food from Zanzi, wanting to engage. Duncan, are you raising your hand to speak?
Thank you so much. Obviously, it's an honor to be part of tonight's session, just listening to the farmers, Dr. Nadia as well, Joanna, Davidzo and Tabo. Dr. Nadia, you mentioned something earlier that I think was quite profound, talking about how a key problem is the business models that agriculture depends on. And in fact, what could save or I guess provide some relief for farmers in implementing different business models. But practically speaking, what would that look like maybe from a crop farmer perspective or there's Joanna in the room here, a poultry farmer perspective or even Tabo, a dairy farmer. What would that look like, practically speaking?
When you think about a circular business model, one way to get your grips around that is to divide your business into the different systems that makes it work and look at how the energies, good people, relationships, and things flow in each of those. So your typical systems would be, first of all, your energy system, your water system, your waste system, your land system. For farmers, those are important. But then there is your operations, which you could conceptualize also as a circle that feeds off the others, etc., etc. Even marketing is a relationship system with your buyers and those you purchase from, your logistics and that, which is a two-way street. So you have to build those kinds of things. But when you get to the ecological side, it's really, really important to be quite creative and bold and think about the wastes. It all starts with the wastes. Like, for instance, a chicken farm would certainly have chicken waste. You have to simply sell it or repurpose it in another production system on your farm where you grow vegetables. You just simply cannot waste the value that's in the chicken shit. Sorry, I'm up at night. So you have to look at all those things. So your water system, even something as complex as a technological system. Are you buying your technology? Why are you buying new things all the time? Why don't you buy things that you can repurpose? Why don't you have the capacity to repurpose and DIY? There's all those things that you simply have to do. And I think in the old days, most farms were circular enterprises. Because you got to understand, if you buy your inputs off the open market, all the profit in that input which you want is already built in the price that you pay. So you can't make it. It's just not possible to make it. And that's why small farmers don't make it, because of the dominance and the greater efficiencies of scale. So you have to really understand your position, and you have to see how you can rebuild these circular systems that really repurpose waste and bring them back. I don't want to get into details because people need to start exploring it and there's not enough time. But we have to think about those things.
Thanks so much for that context. And I'd maybe like to get the conversation coming through with farmers, just in terms of, do they see themselves being able to incorporate these methods or these systems into how they operate? Daniel spoke about it earlier, how they started rethinking their business models and diversifying in that way. But to open the floor, is there people that's thinking about this, that's doing it? Do raise your hand and I'll give you time to speak. Okay, there I have. Mahlangu, would you like to take the floor? I've also accepted you as a speaker.
Good evening to you all. My name is Kaganibo. I'm an emerging farmer, especially in the poultry side. I've been listening to the fellow speaker, Joanna, yes. So now I just wanted to ask or add on that, in terms of the heating and brooding and everything. There's a major stress that I currently have because I'm about to rear the chickens the day old in the next coming 2 weeks. But now I'm scared with whatever that you brought up. I just want to ask if maybe how many chickens do you raise and what's an alternative plan besides the one that you use with the burning of the wood and everything? Because I believe that we need the ultraviolet light, the ultraviolet or infrared, especially in the growth. Because now it's one of the form of the chicken's growth. It serves as the sunlight outside there. So there's this specific vitamin that it gets from the light. So I just wanted to know if maybe, if it's not generator, obviously the petrol is expensive. If it's not solar, can't we have an alternative plan like biogas? Because I heard the one who does the dairy farm, Nombe, she touched on something about biogas, that the cow waste to generate. But now my question is, can't we ourselves use the waste from the chickens to generate the very same power? And can't we maybe use the gas system, the gas heaters? I don't know if they're going to help or not. But now my really concern is about these infrared lights, because you talked about something with the chicken growth. So I believe that the contribution to the growth is these lights themselves. But now when there's load shedding, how are we going to schedule in the lights being on, especially when we're in the brooding system? Thank you.
Nombe, I see you unmuted. Joandra, do you guys maybe want to respond to that?
I didn't mean to scare you, but it is a scary reality. In my experience, you can use a gas brooder, but even in winter, gas is also very, very expensive. And what happens with a gas brooder? I don't know what your coop looks like or what your structure looks like, but with the gas brooder, you need to have the proper outlet for the gas, because that fumes can also cause health issues in your chickens. So now you're buying the gas is expensive, and then it ends up making all your flock sick, and then you're sitting with chickens that have breathing problems if you don't have a right outlet for the gas. I don't know, I'm not very clued up on biogas, but I don't think it will be your solution for the next 2 weeks. I think that might be something that you will have to work on long term or in the future. The other lady can help us with that. But for now, I don't even know what to advise you on. It's going to be very, very difficult, honestly speaking. So maybe if you can get a normal, the gas heaters that you use inside of the house instead of the brooder. If you can maybe get a heater like that for the time being, so that when electricity is on, you can use your infrared lights and then maybe just use that heater, and it will be much cheaper as well compared to the gas brooder. Use that heater as an alternative for when the light is out or the electricity is off. But please, when you do use gas, make sure that there's enough ventilation going around in your room. It's going to be tricky to balance because now it's extremely cold. So you don't want too much cold air to come in, but you also don't want too much of the fumes of the gas to stay in your coop. So that will be something that you will have to work around.
Thanks, Jo. And Nombe, you'd like to respond as well? Nombe, are you still with us?
Fortunately, the lady has already spoken about the gas heater. I was going to talk about it, but there's no need since you already mentioned it. As for biogas, I don't think it's too reparative in the poultry industry because only using the biogas for cooking and for light. And I'm not sure if you can use the chicken waste for biogas. From what I know, we use the cow dung, since there's a certain gas in the cow in the dung that we can use to generate the gas. Because what happens is that you're going to need a power plant from your dairy shed, whereby you'll be taking all the waste to the inside the gas. So that gas automatically will cook the after a certain time, there will be this horrible smell coming out there, and it will tell you that the gas is already, it's ready to be used. And then you just have to clean it. But after some time, you have to service it. Unfortunately, we had issues whereby the people who came up with this idea of the biogas, there were nowhere to be found in terms of servicing it and stuff. So it became a problem for those who already have the biogases. Because I have two gases on my farm. I'm no longer using it because they're no longer effective for me. I think I'll only suggest it for small scale farmers. But once you grow, they don't play much role in it, but they can help to warm the water and for the light when there's load shedding. Thank you.
Thanks, Nompe. As we start wrapping up the conversation, I'd maybe like to bring in some other aspects. Timakahle, would you like to still say something? I can give you the floor. If not, I'll move on with my questions. You have requested to become a speaker, but I'm not sure if you'd like to contribute or ask a question.
I'm actually in agreement a lot with Doctor. I will give a short sort of view of how to deal within crop production, how to deal with things like load shedding and the increase in fuel prices and everything. It's basically around waste. Reduce waste on the farm, low quality produce, find a way to process it and package it, sell it as processed, and the rest, like waste, try and use it to generate energy, but save as much as possible on cost rather than trying to invest in alternative energies, because in South Africa, they are still very, very expensive. I totally agree with a lot that Doctor says, and it's about understanding your surrounding and working with it. As farmers, again, respecting nature and the processes and understanding the cycles of nature, even within your surrounding environment. I think that's very, very critical.
Thank you so much for your contributions. And I think Dr. Nadia Malan is probably saying amen to that. Besides hands-on farming operations aspects, what are some of the things to consider in terms of maintenance of the cold chain? It's also a very important and critical aspect in terms of, food quality and shelf life. What should we be thinking around that? Maybe I can kick off with you, Dr. Malan.
I don't have much to say about the cold chain. I mean, that is a very technological solution that you have to really invest in. Depends on the machinery and technologies that you have. And that is something that you cannot really play around with. So if you're in that space, you have to make space in your business model, deal with that, and also to actually get hold of alternative technologies to make sure you keep that integrity of the chain intact.
Thanks, Dr. Nadia Malan. Any of our other speakers maybe want to comment on this one? Daniel, you're working with crops. What are some of the aspects that you have to consider and change your thinking around specifically with your markets?
Obviously, the nature in which your business model plays a role in the value chain is also important. So I think if you look at urban agriculture, I think urban agriculture, or being closer to your market, for lack of a better way of putting it, reduces the need for the cold chain as a core focus of your business. Looking at the location of your farm, where you are is also a pivotal part of your business. So I think also considering the location of your business, reducing the mileage in which you have to, take your product to its market, are also ways to alleviate pressure on your business. But obviously, if you're already set up and you've been running for a couple of years, whatever the case is, it's a bit different. So I'm not too sure on where to tackle that as well. Our business model is focused on being closer to the market. So I've already said why that would be a benefit. But yeah, I think that is a bit of a different topic, one to tackle.
Thanks, Daniel. My last aspect that I want to focus on, and I think this probably affects everyone in the space, if you're a farmer, even if you're not, it's around security and safety of agricultural workers and teams who maybe have to travel from where they stay to where the farm is based. Even if they're on the farm itself, there's a lot of challenges around that. What should we be thinking about? And I think, Dr. Nadia Malan, you spoke about the role of local government as we were preparing for the session. What is some of the aspects that farmers need to take into consideration, think about in terms of this?
We need to also understand there's a concept of security you can create with big walls, lots of police, gun protection, etc., etc. That doesn't necessarily give you safety. Safety is something that emerges amongst people if there's cohesion and there's purpose to communities, etc. So our local governments are severely broken, and a lot of farmers suffer from this because their roads are not working. They get often the electricity from local governments, water problems, those kinds of things. So what does it mean? We need to participate in the systems that shape our society, but we need to participate in them with good faith and good intention and the best ideas and the greatest integrity for our future. That would mean voting correctly and for the right people. It also means participating, paying taxes, being responsible. But it could also mean, like it is unfortunately happening, taking over the functions, which is happening in South Africa. And that is maybe also a good thing, although our first prize is to have a capable state that's just and fair in South Africa. And that is what we really need. It's a large answer, but it also means build relationships around where you are. If you are transporting workers, think about other people who are also transporting workers. Talk to each other, build solutions, let them emerge in the good relationships that you form with the people around you.
Thanks, Nadia. Tabo, would you like to contribute?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'd like to echo what Dr. Nadia just said. I feel like the most important aspect that he mentioned is the cohesion part. So I believe that unity definitely a long way. So I'd like to make an example about the farm that I'm on. We stay on the farm and everyone is in close proximity of everyone. Everyone is just united and we just in sync with one another. So we collaborate in everything that happens on the farm and off the farm. We're fortunate enough that 80% of the workers on the farm stay on the farm and it's only a minority that stays off the farm. So the area in itself, Newcastle, Dundee area, the farmers generally collaborate with each other. We don't find any difficulty in that.
Thanks, Tabo. Devin De Sosa, I see you're with us. I'm assuming Daniel is your brother. Would you like to contribute to the conversation?
No, I actually just wanted to add a couple of things. So I'm more on the business aspect of the agri side, and Daniel's obviously more on the agricultural side. But from my take off from this whole thing, and I know I joined late, so my apologies, that we need to look at the farm from a business perspective, not only just like a crop perspective, is that to ensure the sustainability throughout, specifically over this load shedding period and all the other challenges we have in South Africa, labor, etc., as well as political, as well as fuel prices, etc., that we can't control. What we can control is to ensure that we are diversified, not just relying on the existing stuff we grow in the ground, but other things, byproducts, agri-processing, making other products from the existing stuff that we grow, to ensure that we're not reliable on just what we grow in the ground. Taking that into account, plus the fact that when we do grow, let's try and find the market before we grow it to ensure that we're not flooding the market, etc. So I think that when farmers do grow, and we see it a lot in the communities here in Durban, is that they are merely just growing and they're buying the same manure, etc. from further out, whereas they could actually produce it locally. A lot of the stuff that they need, they actually have at hand on their farms. And they could bag that and sell it to nurseries, etc. So there's other ways that they can generate income. But they're thinking small, so they need to think it as a business and not just a feeding scheme per se. So that's just what I see it as. So there's a lot of aspects that we could challenge or limit the exposure that we have and the risks if we just think bigger.
Thanks so much, Devin. Anyone else like to contribute to this point or comment on it? Maybe more specifically, just last points from the farmers in the space around the security, or Dr. Ndimilan specifically spoke about in terms of safety. What are you guys practically doing?
It's Donald again from Shumagashe. As farmers, we need to communicate better. For example, we're struggling through load shedding, fuel prices. Communicate to your people, your labor, let they know what you're going through. Don't just change systems, change things around so that you save, because they will take it as an offense or some sort of punishment. And another thing, don't exist as an island. Be part of your immediate environment. I always make an example of good things happening on your farm have a ripple effect in your surrounding community. If there's a new innovation you've learned, or you can help smaller farmers with access to market, do that. If you do that, it will be highly unlikely that bad things that are planned outside your environment will come into your farm. So relations are very important, and it starts with good communication with your people. If you want to implement something, communicate it properly within your establishment. It solves a lot. Whilst I was with government, a farmer was actually introducing something that was very beneficial to his workers around Boston, but it was not received. People were downing tools. I came in, explained everything in the long run, how it was going to help. It was going to help them. And it was a very good success story, but he had failed to communicate it before implementing it. So communication is very, very important.
Thank you very much, Donald. I appreciate that. That's why I love these spaces. You never know, what experience is and how you can connect. And I just love creating this whole network of farmers and people that can share advice. I love this, guys. I hope that you got some value in some of the practical tips that some of the farmers shared. But also, I think it was a good way of just understanding what's the reality. So thank you so much for everyone who shared their comments. Maybe just a last comment from everyone as we wrap up. Nompe, I see you've already unmuted your mic, so maybe you can give your last comments and share more of the information and one last and final tip from your side. Nompe?
Thank you, Don. I'll say to my fellow dairy farmers, especially emerging farmers, black farmers, there's also a program run by Miss South Africa, whereby I think they started in June until it will run until December this year, where they're offering 75% for whatever you need for dairy, but only paying for 25%. So it doesn't matter what is it, whether you want to construct your workers' houses, you want to buy the new machinery for the dairy, or you want to buy a house, anything related to dairy that you think it can improve it. Milk South Africa is running such a program where they give you 25% of the amount you need, and will be you'll only be paying the 25%. And also, like I with Net, I'm not lobbying for anything or what. All I'm saying is that we gotta look out for our birds and see what the future is holding for us. It's rare wherever you find the company, asking you such big content. Some markets, they're expecting you to produce and then clear how you get all they need is a target you promise to them. But you can't the target you promise them, they simply cut you off, because they're working with the target. So let's consider that, guys, nobody will come up and out of nowhere, offer you 75%, 70% to purchase whatever you like. All you have to do is contribute 30% or 25%. It's a good opportunity. So I'd like us to carry to both ends. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nompe. Thanks so much for sharing that information. Tabo, just to wrap up.
I just want to put out there a final message to the listeners that, I always mention that you really have to be passionate about farming, but in all honesty, passion alone doesn't pay the bills. So I urge farmers, and especially the new entrant farmers, to first be knowledgeable about the various enterprises that they're dealing with. Surround yourselves with experts like Dr. Nadia, like we have here on the group, who knows exactly, what to do in terms of situations like these. Educate yourself, read up on what's happening around you, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of everything that's new in the market, and stay on top of your game and farm on. Don't give up. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabo. David, so last word from you.
So my last word to the farmers is that as farmers, we need to come up with solutions which fit our enterprises. So even if there are other solutions outside there, if it doesn't fit your enterprise.
Joanna, do you maybe want to share your last word, and then we'll give David a chance when he's back?
My last famous words will be to just keep on going. It's the least we can do. That's all we can do. And to keep that fire burning, whether it's load shedding or whether you're making fire, just keep farming.
Thanks, Joandra. Appreciate that. I think David's network must have cut out because he just dropped from the space. But I think, it's great to have him with us, and hopefully we get him back on again. Daniel, do you want to share your last word?
I love what Saba said there. And I'd just like to obviously reiterate as well. I think the online space is an amazing space to lean on as a newcomer, but not only as a newcomer, but for conversations like this. I think a lot of people are going to go back to the drawing board and, do their research. I think that this space is a lovely space to be able to discuss openly with our troubles that we all face. And I think collaboratively, online talks like this, as well as places like LinkedIn, I think are highly beneficial. I'd call them rooms. We can all coexist and powwow and come out with something amazing. So just a word of encouragement, online talks, researching online, looking at what other people are doing, and keep at that, jump deep in, see where it takes you.
Thanks, Daniel. I think my new favorite space is also LinkedIn. That's where I find all of these cool people to join me on this session. Dr. Nadia Malan, we kicked off with you, and you have the last word.
I just want to say, how we're going to triumph over the challenges is going to be determined by a farmer. Only a farmer can do these things for farmers. And the farmer, she or he, will be manufacturing the knowledge, the tools, the technology, the new business models that we will all follow. So please go ahead, Pambili Balimi. Someone will do it, and someone soon will.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nadia Malan. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you so much for sharing what you're dealing with farmers. Nompe, Tabo, Joandra, Daniel, Dr. Nadia Malan, and Davidzo just left us, but thank you so much. Everything of the best. And remember, you can get the story after this event on Food for Mzansi and on the YouTube channel if you've missed anything. From my side, bye for now and keep warm.